Hey you! Join me in this episode of the Radio Vagabond where I share my journey in Luang Prabang, Laos. I go visit the UXO Center, which tells a heartbreaking story of the unexploded bombs from the Vietnam War. This episode was released the first time in May 2017. Welcome to Flashback Friday. We decided to go to Luang Prabang because so many people have recommended it to us.
So it is wonderful to be in Luang Prabang. I've always wanted to visit. It is said that this is where the Buddha smiled when he rested during his travels. And I can see why, because it is beautiful.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world. At the age of 50, he made a bold decision. He sold everything, his house, his car, his furniture, and set out with a quest to visit every single country in the world, documenting everything along the way. This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
This episode of the Radio Vagabond podcast is sponsored by Hotels25.com. Hotels25.com searches all the top travel sites to find the best deals on more than 430,000 hotels around the world. Hotels25.com, it's best price guaranteed. My daughter Clara and I have left Chiang Mai, Thailand after a wonderful month there. And we decided to take the night bus here to Luang Prabang in Laos. I have some friends that have told me that it was going to be a rough ride. But it was cheap, and then how bad could it be? Well, quite bad. Up to the Laos border, it was pretty nice. It was in a minibus, and then after immigration, it would be around 8 or 9 hours in a bigger bus where we could lay down and sleep. We were told that we were going to get a bed so we could actually lie down and sleep through the night. Well, so we thought. It turned out that the bed was more like a small shelf, not long enough for me to stretch out my legs. It wasn't built for a European-sized man, and we couldn't sit up because the next bed was right above us and too close. The roads of Laos in the mountains are not the best in the world, with a lot of potholes and lots of turns. So it was a very bumpy ride. The fact that one of the tires was falling apart didn't help us much either. The rubber was falling off, so they tied a rope around it and stopped every 20 minutes to cool it down with water. That's why we ended up arriving 4 or 5 hours later after a night with very little sleep. Partly because of the bumpy ride, partly because of the chicken in the bus that was keeping us awake. When we were planning our trip to Luang Prabang, we found a guest house on Airbnb called Apple Guest House. The contact was called Jimmy, and he said that it was fully booked, but his parents just opened a new guest house that they would call Apple Sunset, because it's located very close to a spot by the Mekong River where people go to see the sunset at night. It was so new that it wasn't even listed on Airbnb by that time. It is now, and I'll put a link in my show notes. We said yes, even though we didn't even see any pictures of it. And it turned out to be very nice. It was 2 rooms in a private home. The host, Jimmy's adopted parents, Robin and John, were living upstairs, and we shared the kitchen and the bathroom. But that was absolutely not a problem. On the contrary, these were the nicest people. We had our own privacy and at the same time enjoyed the company of Robin and John. In fact, one of the nights we were playing a board game and I won twice. But it was fun kicking your Australian butts. Every morning Robin made us breakfast. Bread and eggs and always a plate of papaya fruit. Robin and John are a retired Australian couple that ended up living in Laos. But it all started with a visit to the place that we just came from, Chiang Mai.
We went on a holiday to Chiang Mai. We went into a little temple. We met a monk who was a Buddhist monk who was practicing his English. We ended up adopting this Buddhist monk as our son, and that was in 1999, so 17 years later or 18 years later. We're now living in Laos, retired and very happy.
Nobody knows exactly how old Buon Mi is. That's Jimmy's birth name.
39 or 40, we don't quite know, because over here, even if you go to his village today, they couldn't tell you what year it is.
And now he's a father?
Yes, he's the father of a most beautiful little girl called Apollina. Apollina was named after the first guest house, Apple Guest House.
So their daughter was named after the guest house, yeah.
That's true, and now we're about to have a second grandchild. We can't call that one Pineapple, so we're not quite sure just yet what we'll choose, but I have Rose for a girl and Cider for a boy picked out.
What about that fruit you've been serving us every morning?
Papaya. No, I don't think papaya is a good name for a child.
I asked Robin to go more into detail on how they ended up adopting a grown-up Buddhist monk as their son.
We didn't set out to adopt anybody, but this person filled a gap in our life and we filled a gap in his life. When we first met Buon Mi, he'd been a Buddhist monk since he was 15 years old. He was only 5 years old when his father passed away, and he'd been a Buddhist monk for 30 years. And so when the son was born, the father made his mother promise him that his only son would become a monk. Mm-hmm. So he was a monk right through all of his education, which gave him a free education, and he ended up having a university education, getting his bachelor's degree at university. Once we'd met Buon Mi, he had asked us to help him with his English, and so we used to communicate on the internet. So we invited him to Australia to improve his English, and we just got on really well as a little family. We have no children of our own, and he didn't have a family, so to speak of. He hadn't seen his mother since he was 16, and he was now in his 20s, and we just got on really well, and so we decided to adopt him formally with a Buddhist ceremony. We had 65 of our friends and family turn up, and I can remember the day of his ceremony. I was ironing his Buddhist robes, which females aren't supposed to touch robes, but I was ironing them because I wanted them to look nice for the photographs. And I said to him, "Are you happy that we're doing this?" And he said, "Yes, I always wanted someone to love and someone to love me." And that's what I think the whole sort of thing came about, that we were a bond. We bonded with the three of us. He's very, very close to my husband. And people look at us and they can't believe that it is really a true family between the three of us, but we are. We argue just like a normal family. We're happy like a normal family. We share things like a normal family.
Yeah, and I've seen you taking care of your grandchild as well.
I love taking care of my grandchild. Just because she's 100% cute doesn't mean have anything to do with it. But I never had children of my own, and now I am in my 60s. I can just relax and enjoy her, and like you said, hand her back when they get a bit hard to handle. Yeah. But she's very good because she's very placid. Lao people are very placid, and she seems to take everything in her stride. Like, she'll fall over, but she won't cry. She'll get up and rub her head. So just, I don't know whether my other granddaughter was the same. And that's something else with the story. I ended up adopting my son's sister as well.
Oh.
She lives in Australia, and now she's married to an Australian guy, and they have 2 children. So I actually have 3 grandchildren all up. And she'll be coming to visit. She comes to visit every year.
Before I started planning my journey, Laos was not really on my radar. Maybe I would be able to point sort of where it was on a map, but I knew more about Vietnam and Thailand in this region. Did you feel the same, even though you're from Australia and closer than Denmark?
When we first met Buon Mi, it was the first time I'd ever heard Laos and Laotian people. I didn't realise there were such people because it's only a small country and had been at war for so many years. It wasn't in our radar, as you said. And it's surrounded by 5 countries, so it's totally landlocked. The beauty of it is that it's been kept from the outside world for so long. It only opened up to tourism in 1995 by UNESCO, and prior to that it was just a little country town with dirt roads, temples that were dilapidated and everything else. But now UNESCO's come in, and a lot of people have donated money to the temples to bring them back to their normal splendour, because they were just decaying, and it was just sad. And now if you walk around town, you'd never think that these temples were all decaying. Yeah. The fences were gone, and they've all been repaired.
Yeah. But it was a big part of the Vietnam War.
It wasn't supposed to be, and if you listen to President Nixon's speech, he denies ever being at war with Laos. But the truth of the matter is that Laos was in between Thailand, where the planes flew from, to Vietnam, and they had to fly over Laos. And the most dangerous thing you can do is land a plane with bombs on. And so these planes would fly back, and if they had bombs, they would let them go in Laos before they landed.
Is that why they dropped them?
Yes, that's one of the reasons. Wow. Because it went all over the country. There was no Vietnamese where they dropped them. They just had to get rid of them. And that's why there were so many. There's more bombs dropped in Laos than the entire Second World War.
As Robin said, it was one of the reasons, but not the only reason. It was also part of the efforts to isolate communist North Vietnamese forces. They call it the Ho Chi Minh Corridor. From 1964 to 1973, 2 million tons of bombs were dropped over Laos. The US dropped more bombs on this country during that 9-year period than they did in all of World War II. A bomb was dropped every 8th minute, 24 hours a day. It made Laos per person the most heavily bombed country in the world. Over 50,000 people were killed in that period. But since then, another 20,000 more people have died from these bombs. After the bombing stopped, you see, more than 30% of the bombs did not explode. They were just left in the ground, and to this day, almost 1 person per day is killed by these unexploded ordinances, or UXOs as they call them. Robin told me and Clara to go and visit the UXO Center,
which is a place that talks about the unexploded bombs from the Vietnam War. Mainly it's farmers that accidentally hits them when working in the fields, and then it's children that find them and play with them, and it's so terrible. So this place is... a lot of their work is building the awareness mainly for children, that they should be careful when they stumble on things that might be a bomb. And it made a huge impression on both of us. What do you think, Clara?
I mean, I was just speechless. That movie we saw, it was so horrible, and there were all of these children that were maimed by bombs, and
one losing a hand and almost a part of an arm and an eye, and it was heartbreaking to see.
Yeah.
The bamboo shoots will bring up a bomb with it as it grows and push it up through the ground, because they used to drop these pineapple bombs that would turn into many little bombs, bommies they call them.
The Vietnam War is still killing 300 people every year.
In Laos it is, yes.
Laos, yeah.
A few months before us, President Obama was right here in Laos as the first sitting president of the United States. Here, he made an announcement.
I also know that the remnants of war continue to shatter lives here in Laos. Many of the bombs that were dropped were never exploded. Over the years, thousands of Laotians have been killed or injured. Farmers tending their fields, children playing, And that's why, as president, I've dramatically increased our funding to help remove these unexploded bombs. The United States will double our annual funding to $90 million over the next 3 years to help Laos expand its work.
But then at some point, you and your husband decided to go and live here. Was it the plan that you were moving here, or was it just a temporary thing, or is it?
We came every year. I got involved with doing charity work over here. So I teach English for free, and I started a school in Van Vieng, which we have about 85 to 105 kids go. They're all primary school kids, and they go after school. And it was just a floor with a roof, and now we've eventually put wall around it, and now we've got windows and doors, and we provided all the books. And I pay a young girl who's only 17, but she started working when she was only 15 for me, and she teaches level 1 and 2 English. So it just gives the kids a little bit more English. And believe it or not, English in this country is very, very important. It helps them get from dirt poor to middle class just by getting a job where you can speak English. And I've seen it happen with my students that have gone on to university and now have good careers. So that was something that brought us back every year. And then my son, who was living with us, he couldn't find love in Australia. So he decided to move back to Laos, and he actually got a job in the Australian Embassy in Vientiane for 2 years as a property manager, because he'd done his apprenticeship and worked with my husband for 7 years as a builder. Perfect job for him. And he didn't find love in Vientiane either. However, he was in the process of buying this little guest house, and he was only here a few short weeks when he met his true love, and within 3 months they were married. Much to my disappointment, because I hadn't even met her and I didn't know anything about her. But when I did meet her at the airport, she was really nervous to meet me, and I was really nervous to meet her, but she's absolutely beautiful and we love each other very much. So I'm very happy and very lucky.
Yeah, I've met her, and absolutely he's a lucky man.
Yeah. And so from that, what happened was my husband kept coming over and helping my son at the guest house, being a builder, and I got sick of doing all the work at home. And so we just sat down one night and hatched out this plan that if we rented out our house, we could afford to come and live here. And so we said 3 years, and now the 3 years are up and we're still here. And when we go home, I'm not sure. But we just keep getting more involved with my son and his family, and with some of the volunteer work that I'm doing.
Yeah. And the house that you have here, this is where we live. So you rent a couple of rooms out here on Airbnb as well.
Yes, I've only just started that too, because having no income for 3 years, we decided that we had these empty rooms and that it would be easy for us to do, which it is. We're happy to have people live with us. We've had it all their life virtually. And you meet interesting people from all over the world. So it's a bonus. So if you want to come and meet some Australians living in Laos, come and stay.
I can highly recommend it.
Like I mentioned, Robin cooked us breakfast every morning, but she told us that if we needed to get up early one morning, we were welcome to cook for ourselves. And I did that this morning.
Yes, I was lying in bed and I heard crash, and I thought, hello, someone's in the kitchen. I opened the door and a big waft of smoke comes straight up the staircase, and I thought, hello, they need help.
So I was knocking over the kitchen and burning the bread, and then I tried to fry an egg, which I sort of thought I could.
Yeah.
Not used to gas, but thankfully you came down and helped me, and that made it even more appreciated, the breakfast that you cooked me and my daughter.
We decided to go to Luang Prabang because so many people have recommended it to us. A lot of them actually called this small town one of their favorite places in Asia. Luang Prabang is located in the center of Laos by the Mekong River and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It has both natural and historical sites. Among the natural sites are the Guangxi Falls and Pak O Caves, a small boat ride up the Mekong River. Luang Prabang has a population of only 55,000 people, so it's not a big city. And I'm actually surprised it was even that big. It seemed smaller. There are no high-rise buildings, and I didn't see a single chain shop. No H&M, Starbucks or 7-Eleven. I didn't even see a McDonald's. Can you believe that? But a lot of wonderful restaurants and cafes, and quite a few beautiful temples. But still, it's not a boring place.
The thing about Luang Prabang is there's always something on. The night markets are on every night. It's so nice to walk around of a night time. We have at least 3 or 4 parades a year.
But still, it's also a quiet place. It's not a big city.
I don't like big cities. This is just perfect. You can walk everywhere and you can go into shops and they get to know you as a local and things like that. But the whole nation of Laos, the people are much more gentler, calmer, and they smile a lot. They don't force you to buy things, or they don't try and drag you into their shops or anything like that. And I think it's just a more relaxed place. And people that come nearly always return. And we find that in the guest house that people book for 2 nights, they end up staying for 4. If they book for 4 nights, they end up staying for 6, because it's one of those places that just gets you. It's got really good food. It's probably got the best food in Southeast Asia. You can get any type of food here. And there's so much to do here. From waterfalls to caves to elephants to the Mekong River, the museums, and the beautiful temples that are just, absolutely laden with gold drawings and statues and sketches and things like that. So it's just a special, special place. And we're really lucky that we're retired here. We just love the feel of it.
One of the other big reasons we decided to go here was because of the beautiful Guangxi Falls. Only 45 minutes drive outside of Luang Prabang.
I can totally see why this is a tourist attraction. This is so beautiful. It's widespread, and the water is blue, purple. And it's possible to swim, and it's wherever you turn your head, that's another great picture. It is so beautiful. Oh man, we're coming up to the big one now. Clara, you need to follow me. We're coming up to the big one. There's a big one. So I've just tried to describe what this looks like. Can you put some words on it?
It's like a really, really tall wedding cake of a waterfall, because there's so many beautiful layers and it's just floating down. So it actually, it reminds me of a very, very tall cake.
Okay, now we get to the tallest one. The bride and groom is up here, and purple. The colors are so amazing as well. Yeah.
It was a hot day at the waterfall, but still we decided to climb all the way to the top of it. It was quite a hike to get up there. Some of the places we need to hold on to the branches of the trees, but it was absolutely worth the sweat.
We made it all the way up to see the amazing waterfall, and now we're back again. Just cracked open a cold beer and a Coke, and we actually climbed to the top of the waterfall as well. That was very, very tough and very steep, so my legs are killing me at the moment. And then we went into the water and went swimming in the waterfall. And here's the snack. Thank you. Bye. I think I'll sleep well tonight.
We also went sailing up the Mekong River to the caves, but mostly just walking around beautiful Luang Prabang.
In next week's episode on the Radio Vagabond podcast.
That's about all we have time for in this episode, but I'm not quite done talking to Robin. She also told me some stories from their time here in Laos, where she got into problems with the police. One time she and one of the young monks were in a car accident.
We ended up knocking this fence down and went into a very old, historic UNESCO boat.
As a punishment, they decided that she would have to attend a ceremony.
And that I would have to pay for 3 chickens, noodles, and some beer.
In all the commotion, someone was yelling at her.
And I said, I can yell just as loud as you can. But I didn't realise, I'd forgotten they couldn't understand what I said. So they probably thought I was swearing at them or something like that. So they went off to get the police.
Another time she was arrested for, and get this, giving out free school books and pencils to children.
And they arrested me because I did not have permission to give out free books in this village.
These stories will give you a good insight to the culture of Laos, and they're quite entertaining. So you don't want to miss the next episode, right here from beautiful Luang Prabang in Laos.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes or the podcast app on your smartphone. You can see pictures, watch videos, and read much more on the RadioVagabond.com. Pale can be reached for interviews and public speaking gigs on mail at theradiovagabond.com.
My name is Pale Bo. Thanks for listening.